Because she turned down the romantic advances of a neighbour, Rahima had acid poured over her face. A cowardly crime perpetrated while she was asleep, leaving her disfigured for life.
I may still be alive, but he took my life away. I have become the shame of my family and of my village. I have nowhere to go.
The Acid Survivor Foundation receives more than thousands of victims every year.
Now, could you explain why we're doing
Dr. Hiles is one of their volunteers. A renowned plastic surgeon in the UK, he operates on victims and trains Bangladeshi doctors in reconstructive surgery.
I would love to be able to make her face as it was before. That is not possible. The devastation that acid causes is really quite similar to the devastation from electricity or from alkali or from flame or from hot water. So the principles are very similar. Acid usually burns right through the skin.
Most cases of acid attack befall women who have turned down the advances of male admirers. Some of them experience this rejection as so humiliating that they resort to this crime, using acid as a way to rob a woman of her beauty.
Appearance is very important. Appearance is our identity. So when this appearance changes, the whole life is changed. And they have to restart their life, and it's very difficult. So perpetrator has a strong mindset not to kill the person, but to, put the victim in a position that they suffer for life.
Officially, there are around 200 acid-related crimes every year. However, many cases remain unreported for fear of reprisal.
No one knew how many acid attacks there were in the country, so we started to collect our figures. And the more we collected, the more serious was the problem. The number of acid attacks started to increase. We could see this. And by 2002, when I left, there were over 500 attacks a year, and the numbers were growing.
Despite repeated requests for an interview, the government declined to comment on the subject. The authorities claim to have taken stern action to prevent such crimes, making it illegal to sell the lethal substance to the public. But it seems that they are having problems enforcing this law.
We just got hold of a gallon of acid for just under $3. This despite government restriction on the sale of acid. It is readily made available to the public.
When 8-year-old Bubbly was an infant, her father poured store-bought acid into her ears and over her feet. He was angry that she had been born a girl. The government has ensured that cases of acid attack be tried within 6 months. Yet Bubbly and her mother have been waiting for the last 5 years for their case to be heard. Despite an arrest warrant against Bubbly's father, the police have not taken action.
Because of the impunity, the perpetrators are not punished, and therefore the other potential perpetrators who have this mindset can be encouraged to do that. So I think it is very important to have a education program to change the mindset of the men.
Acid attack remains a common crime in Bangladesh. Until the law is enforced and mindsets are changed, women will continue to be at risk, and cases like Bubbly's will remain unpunished. Nicholas Haque, Al Jazeera, Dhaka.
Dr. Ronald Hiles was the plastic surgeon in Nicholas Haque's report, who's doing what he can to repair the damage for acid attack victims, and he joins us now from London. It is shocking and appalling that still continues. We couldn't get any government response. I mean, are they taking this seriously?
Yes, they are. I think that Bangladesh, and including the government of Bangladesh, deserves a lot of congratulation on the work they've done within 10 years. So they are taking action, but it is a difficult problem.
Now, give us a sense, if you will, working with these people, what it is that happens to them, the pain and the disfiguration that occurs from having acid thrown on their body.
Well, initially they could be forgiven for thinking that it was water that was thrown at them, but they soon realised that although it's initially cold, it begins to sting almost unbearably. And because the acid burns so deeply, it destroys most of the skin, the thickness of the skin, sometimes penetrates to the tissues underneath and the bone. And the pain goes away, and they sometimes are lulled into a false sense of security, that the burn is no longer painful. It looks like leathery, dark skin. But as time goes by, they find that the skin is actually dead, and it takes time to separate. So it's a gruesome affair. It usually affects the face, and the acid trickles down, and it can involve the breasts and even lower down. It involves very often the shoulder joint, and when it goes on untreated, then there will be eventually restriction of movement in the arms, but gross distortion of the face. Very often it gets into the eyes, and if that is so, then almost certainly severe restriction of vision and even blindness can happen.
Now you, plastic surgery, you attempt to change the physical side to try and recreate as much as you can. But from a psychological point of view, what is the impact? How do you ever overcome something like that?
Well, it's difficult to understand how it can be overcome, but from my knowledge of many of the victims who've become survivors, and who I know very well over many years, they do overcome it in a sort of way. I'm thinking now of a young lady called Fazilatun Nessa. Now, she has been completely rehabilitated. She told me the other day that nobody else in her family had ever been abroad. She'd just been on an ambassadorial trip to Australia, telling people about the horrors of acid victims. She rides a big motorbike, and no one else in her family, and let alone very many women in Bangladesh, ride a motorbike. She has a very good job with graphene phone. So some people actually are rehabilitated, and they show tremendous strength of spirit. They're greatly helped by one another too. So when recently we met 600 survivors in Bangladesh, they were really enjoying themselves, and they were able to give some tips to survivors from Cambodia, from Pakistan, and from Uganda who were also there.
Yeah, because it is widespread. It's not just in Bangladesh that this happens. You say that the government there is doing as much as it possibly can, but the fact that it still goes on, I mean, what is it that's needed? How do you change that mindset?
Well, I think there are evil men out there, and the most evil ones of them are very difficult to convince that this is a horrendous attack. They need to become aware that anybody else outside themselves have their own rights, and particularly women. And I think the reduction from 500 in 2002 to under 200 in the last full year, 2008, shows that the people who can be influenced are being influenced. And I think there's a hardcore of men out there who are just determined and so selfish that they want to destroy another person's life just because they can't have their own way.
Unbelievable. Thank you for talking to us, Dr. Ronald Miles, and for that incredible work you're doing for those victims.